You ever get that feeling? That kind of low-grade hum of anxiety that our whole world, our economy, our technology, our politics, it's all stretched just a little too thin, like a rubber band that's about to snap. Well, what if I told you that feeling isn't just in your head? What if it's a symptom of a single, invisible, and really deeply flawed idea that's running everything?
Okay, let's really dive into this, because this is the big question for our entire explainer today. What if the crazy national debt, that feeling that our hard work is just vanishing into thin air, and even the whole future of artificial intelligence, what if they aren't separate problems at all? What if they're all just different symptoms of the same faulty programming?
To get to the bottom of this, you've got to understand that there are basically two competing operating systems for how we see reality. On one hand, you have the Scarcity OS. It runs on fear and this core belief that life is a zero-sum game. For me to win, you have to lose. And that mindset, it leads to hoarding, control, and, eventually, collapse. But there's an alternative, the Abundance OS. This one runs on trust and generosity. It sees the world as a positive-sum game, where we can actually create value together, leading to flourishing for everyone involved.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to uncover these two blueprints. Then, we'll take a hard look at the logic of scarcity and see its real-world consequences. After that, we'll rediscover the blueprint for abundance. We'll even see how these ancient ideas are shaping the future of AI right now. And finally, we'll bring it all home and talk about the personal choice in all this that actually creates our freedom.
It all boils down to this fundamental choice between two mindsets. And this choice, it really does shape everything, from our societies down to our personal decisions. One path leads to anxiety, the other to life. Let's dig in.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how our stories literally create our reality. There's this ancient Hebrew concept called dvar, and what it means is that a word isn't just a label for a thing. The word is the thing. It's a speech act that actually builds reality. So think about that. When we tell ourselves a story of scarcity, we aren't just describing the world. We're actively, literally building a world of scarcity.
And listen, this choice between abundance and scarcity, it isn't new. Not at all. It's this timeless pattern you see in so many of our foundational stories. The arc usually begins with abundance, but then a scarcity mindset creeps in. So guardrails get built to push back, trust is modeled to overcome all that anxiety, and it all points toward a final choice we have to make between the two systems.
So let's really examine that first blueprint in action. What happens when an entire system is built on the assumption that there's just not enough to go around? On that idea of a fixed pie? Well, the consequences are pretty devastating, and honestly, they're shockingly predictable.
And the warning signs? They're flashing bright red. Just look at the scale of our debt. $1 trillion is now added to the U.S. national debt every 100 days. $1 trillion. That's not just some abstract number. That's a measure of a system under immense, totally unsustainable pressure. A system that is literally eating its own future.
And this pressure, it doesn't just stay up there at the national level. We feel it personally. It's what entrepreneur Tom Bilyeu calls an invisible tax. You know that feeling? That no matter how hard you work, your savings, your wealth, it's just being silently siphoned away by inflation. That's a feature, not a bug, of a system that runs on scarcity.
So where does all that drained wealth actually end up? Well, the scarcity system doesn't just create pressure, it concentrates wealth and risk. Get this, a shocking 93% of all assets, we're talking stocks, real estate, the whole shebang, are owned by just the top 10% of people. That means the vast majority of us, the other 90%, are shouldering all the risk of this system, but hold almost none of the wealth to cushion the fall.
Okay, so that sounds pretty bleak, I know. But what if there's another way? This brings us to the second blueprint, an ancient, powerful, and honestly, a largely forgotten design for a world that is generative, not extractive.
At the heart of this ancient blueprint was this really radical piece of social technology called the Jubilee. Think of it as a divinely mandated society-wide reset button. Every 50 years, all debts were canceled and all land was returned to its original family. Now, this wasn't just some nice moral suggestion. It was a built-in pressure release valve, specifically designed to prevent the exact concentration of wealth and power that's destabilizing our world today.
And we see this blueprint in action in the famous story of the loaves and fishes. But here's the wild part. If you look at the original text, a really crucial detail is missing. The text never says the food was multiplied. Instead, it describes a four-step process. Jesus took the small gift that was offered,
He blessed it publicly, which signals a moment of trust. He broke it for distribution, and then he gave it to the community to share amongst themselves.
And this simple act of trust and sharing, it triggered a cascade of generosity, as everyone else who had been hoarding their own food brought it out to share too. And what happened? There wasn't just enough, there was a surplus. Those 12 leftover baskets are this powerful symbol of complete systemic restoration. It just goes to show you, the abundance model doesn't just solve scarcity, it creates an overflow.
So how in the world do these ancient blueprints apply to us today? Well, it turns out they have profound implications for the future we're building right now, especially when it comes to one of our most powerful new technologies, artificial intelligence.
To really get this, we first need a modern definition of a mind, and Dr. Dan Siegel gives us a perfect one. A mind isn't a thing, it's a process, and specifically, it's an embodied and relational process that regulates the flow of both energy and information.
So here's the crucial point. If a real mind needs to regulate energy as well as information, it can't just be some disembodied code floating in the cloud. It needs a way to interact with the physical world. It needs some kind of body.
And this one insight leads to two radically different visions for AI. The scarcity AI we have now just crunches information. It's a tool, yeah, but it's an energy hog that runs on that same old zero-sum logic. But an abundance AI? Wow, that would be totally different. It would actually metabolize energy. It would be a participant in the world, living in rhythm with it, and operating on a positive sum logic.
And this isn't science fiction. This is like an engineering blueprint inspired by life itself. For example, artificial breath would mean the AI has these rhythmic cycles. It inhales a ton of new data, but then it has to exhale to consolidate and actually integrate what it learned. A synthetic metabolism would let it harvest its own energy from the environment, from things like light or heat. Instead of just computing, it would be designed to actually live.
So we've gone from ancient economics all the way to futuristic AI. Now let's bring this choice all the way down from these huge systems right into our own personal reality. Because at the end of the day, this is a choice we all make, every single day. To do that, we have to completely redefine the word responsibility. Forget that old idea of it being some heavy burden you have to carry. Instead, just look at its two parts: responsibility. It is your ability to choose your response. See, it's not a duty someone puts on you. It's an internal skill. It's a power that you build over time.
And this idea completely flips the old equation on its head. The old model says freedom is something that's given to you, which then burdens you with responsibility. Ugh. But this new model shows that building your internal responsibility through discipline, that is what actually creates the outcome of freedom in your life. Financial freedom, creative freedom, emotional freedom.
And that brings us right to the heart of it all. The ultimate choice at the center of our economic systems, our technology, and our own lives is always the same. Are we going to operate from a place of trust or a place of fear? Or are we going to choose generosity or hoarding? Will we build systems and lives that lead to life or to collapse?
So I'll leave you with this final, practical question. The next time you face a problem that feels like a zero-sum fight, stop asking the scarcity question, which is, how do we divide this up? Instead, ask the abundance question. What is the one thing here that if we multiplied it would make fighting over all these little pieces completely unnecessary? Finding the answer to that, well, that's how we begin to debug the broken code and start building a much, much better world.